Welcome back to another how-to video brought to you by onX Offroad's Elite Membership Program. If you're not an Elite member, make sure you go and sign up so that you can save lots of money on awesome parts like this. Today's episode is brought to you by BDS Suspension and Fox Shocks. We're going to be teaching you how to put this suspension in that bus. So the whole point of today's episode is we're going to be converting a 2002 Ford E450 from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive. And we're going to be using BDS Suspension's 6-inch lift meant for an F350, and we're going to retrofit it into an E450. So what we want to do is we want to go over the parts that we've got that we are going to be utilizing to make this E450 into a four-wheel drive off-road machine. We're going to be putting 6-inch lift rear leaf springs in it, and we're going to be using BDS Suspension 6-inch lift 4-bar front suspension. And we're going to be topping that off with Fox Shocks coilovers. So you might be wondering why we're using F350 suspension in an E450 bus. Well, the frame width is the exact same. So we're going to have to do some measuring. We're going to have to be changing a bunch of stuff. We're going to change some spring pockets. We're going to be adding brackets to the frame rails at the rear and putting 4-link suspension to the Dana 60 front axle and the 10.5 Ford rear that we built on another episode. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. When converting anything from two-wheel drive to a four-wheel drive application, you're going to have to add a transfer case. Now you're going to have to do some independent research and find out if a transfer case will bolt to your transmission or not. In some situations, you're going to have to change your transmission in order to adapt to a four-wheel drive transfer case. With our bus, luckily this bus has a 4R100 in it, and it's got an e-brake system on the back. We can just unbolt that, and now we have a four-wheel drive transmission that our transfer case is going to bolt directly to. All right, so we have our 10.5-inch Ford rear end that we are going to be using our BDS rear leaf springs to adapt that rear end into our bus. With our BDS suspension kit, it came with new U-bolts and brackets to hold your U-bolts to, and also it came with a bracket for our brake lines. So we're going to be utilizing all these parts that are normally for an F350, and we're going to be putting them into the bus. Now moving forward, we have our NV271 transfer case. Now this is out of a 2002 Ford F350, and this is a 6-bolt flange that's going to bolt directly to our 4R100 transmission in the bus. So moving on, we have our new control arm brackets from BDS. We have our sway bar link drop brackets, and we've got all of our hardware and bushing kits right here. Now moving forward, we have our Fox coilover shocks that we're going to be using. Now we may be changing these shocks. We may be changing these coilovers depending on what length we need. If these don't fit, we're going to be ordering another set, which is no big deal, but we bought what we think is going to work. Now we've got our upper and lower control arms. We have our new sway bar drop mount bracket that we're going to be putting onto our cross member. And we have our track bar mount bracket that we're going to be bolting to the cross member. And we have our new fully adjustable track bar. Right next to that, we have our 6-inch drop pitman arm. And then BDS Suspension has made this super simple. So we've got our spring pocket brackets. We have our reservoir brackets. And we have our lower coilover brackets that bolt right to our Dana 60. We're also going to be using our Fox Shocks dual shock stabilizer kit that's going to bolt right to our Dana 60 and to our upper steering bracket. Now last but not least, we have our Dana 60 that we already built, and we're going to be mounting all this stuff to it and getting it shoved in the bus. Now that we've showed you all the components that came with our BDS suspension lift kit for our F350 that we're using in the bus, now it's time to take the suspension out of the bus and start getting a game plan on where we want to put our brackets and how we want to mount our front axle. We're just going to get everything off of here as quick as possible. So we just need it out of the way so we can figure out what needs to be cut, what needs to be removed. I know we're going to be removing all the brackets off the frame, so got quite a bit of work ahead of us. All right, you don't need an impact to take your brake line off, but it helps. It does help. So what you want to do is you want to unplug your ABS line, disconnect your brakes. Then we've got to do the shock, the rear mount, so this way when we go to drop the front end out, it's going to very dramatically spring out. Boing! And look cool. So after taking a look at the sway bar and the way that it's set up on this bus, it's a little bit different than an F350. So we're going to actually order us a sway bar for an F350, and it'll bolt right into there with our brackets and be able to drop it down and work. but this one we're not going to reuse. The factory steering stabilizer bracket is off. We're going to be adding a steering stabilizer to our axle housing itself. So that's no longer needed. The cool thing about this so far is every single thing is bolted on. So in certain situations, you may not be able to get a wrench up inside to take a bolt or a nut off. And in our situation, we can't get the top for the shock. So Hillbilly's going to fire up the torch. He's going to cut that very, very carefully. If you use a torch, make sure you're qualified to use it so that you don't start anything on fire, like we're about to do. Well, that was nice. I just came and hung out with the other one.
One of your first steps you want to do when you're pulling a rear axle is you're going to want to unhook your drive line. And then once you go from the drive line, do like your sway link, then your shocks. Lower it down, leaf springs, lift it up. Axle should stay on the ground. Once you get all the brakes undone too. Okay, this side's all unbolted. I just got to do 2 more leaf spring shackle bolts on the other side. Then raise the bus up and you'll watch the rear axle just stay on the ground. Now if I have everything unhooked and everything's done properly, this axle should not come off the ground. It should just stay on the ground as the bus goes up. That's what I'm hoping for.
You want to come ride on it?
Okay, so we've got to get 4 bolts out of the drive line and undo 2 bolts back here for the carrier bearing, and then this whole drive line will be out of our way. Drive line's now out, so now we can do the e-brake assembly.
Oh, got it. Got it.
Got it?
And there's the e-brake assembly / transmission tail housing.
All right, so as you can see behind us, we've got all the suspension out. We're going to walk from the front to the back and show you just what we had to do in order to put all this brand new suspension in it. So we had to eliminate the double I-beam front suspension out of the bus. We've dropped everything out. We still need to get these shock towers out, but we're going to leave them for the time being until we're ready to put the new ones on. Now moving back, we got lucky on this build because this transmission is actually a 4-wheel drive transmission that they put in this bus as a 2-wheel drive. They went ahead and they put the e-brake assembly on it. We removed that e-brake assembly, and now our NV271 is going to bolt right up to this, and we're going to be able to put 4-wheel drive drive shafts in this bus and convert this thing easily. Moving to the back, we dropped out the Dana 80 dually rear axle. We rolled that out of the way. We've got the leaf springs out of here, and we're going to be able to move these brackets forward for the new BDS Suspension 6-inch lift springs and get it back into position where we can put the 10.5 in this bus, and it's going to work out really well. So all the BDS suspension is going to make this conversion super simple. Like we said earlier, we were able to use the F350 6-inch lift kit. It was a complete kit with everything you need to upfit this 2-wheel drive bus into a 4-wheel drive conversion. But as we come to the end of this build series, we hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you onX Offroad for bringing this how-to series to YouTube, and thank all the elite partners, and thank you guys. And if you don't have your elite membership, make sure you head over to onX Offroad, get yourself the elite membership, save yourself a lot of money for projects that you have at home. As always, we appreciate you. Thanks for watching.